judge it. If I were to run, I think they're going to judge me on my vitality. Can I still run up the steps of Air Force Two? Am I still in good shape? Do I have all my faculties? Am I energetic?
You just damn some horse. Talk about this now. You don't have to, no, you don't have to do it. No. You don't have
to. Soon. And yeah, that guy is definitely of sound mind and body. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. This is Luke Radowski of WeAreChange.org. My goodness, golly gracious, do we have yet another massive cover-up by the Federal Bureau of Investigations, which has been exposed once again in an extremely big ordeal that we're going to be talking about specifically in this video. Lots of dereliction of duty, to say the least. But before we do that and cover some local news, the video that we played in the beginning of this broadcast is by a very artistic YouTuber called Post America. The link to their channel is, of course, down below if you want to see the full video that we played a short excerpt of in the beginning of this broadcast. They do, let's just say, very interesting videos, to say the least. Now, a very important marker that not a lot of people talk about is one of which is the larger question of what kind of world are we leaving for the next generation, for our children? And if current examples of our society are examples of it, they are definitely not going to have a good time, as we have massive money printing, a lot of inflation, as Bloomberg is even reporting right now that food is more expensive today than it has been for the vast majority of modern recorded human history. This is not just happening in the United States, this is happening internationally, this is happening globally, and let's be honest here, this is only the beginning of many problems that have been created by governments, their lockdowns, their mandates, and their ridiculous policies that put a stranglehold on any even concept and idea of a free market, which sadly we are very far away from. Our children are not only being let down by our political leaders, but also individuals in academia, as of course there's many examples of pure degeneracy and absolutely inappropriate adult content being distributed to children, to the point where even the mayor of Hudson, Ohio, had to show up at a school board meeting and demand that school board members resign or be charged criminally over distributing adult content to small children. This was a case that, of course, was made very public. There's many more instances and cases that we, of course, do not hear about on the national media. But what is happening in government indoctrination centers, or as some people call them, public schools, many people have argued is degrading the minds of young people who in a few years from now will be in positions of power. The abuse of children doesn't just happen by indoctrination centers, it also happens by big tech monopoly companies that knowingly create an algorithm which they know creates a toxic situation which leads to harm of many young people in this country. As we're finding out from leaked internal research reports that many young children who use apps like Facebook and Instagram, specifically 1 in 3 girls, have severe body image issues that are made worse by the algorithm that is carefully curated to keep them glued to their phones. 32% of girls said Instagram made their insecurities worse, all of course as there has been an explosion in instances of self-harm, depression, social disorders, anxieties, and extremely negative mental consequences for young people, which is correlated with their use of social media and social media becoming more prominent. Big tech social media companies, of course, know this, and yet still continue in their practices, which they know is leading to severe social harm, and in many instances is even leading to many of these people taking their own lives, as the research and data suggests. We're also learning today that Facebook, that knowingly many times censors alternative independent media in favor of destroying the competition for the big mainstream media corporations out there, also has an algorithm that gives special treatment and special privileges to the elites, to celebrities and politicians who play by a different set of rules in their carefully curated algorithm that would normally punish someone for sharing those same kind of posts. Now, if you really comparatively think about children in our modern day and age that are being raised with less economic opportunities, higher prices of living, with cell phones glued to their eyeballs, literally rewiring their brain to the benefit of the corporate oligarchs out there that are creating more depressed, more sad, more individuals who are creating self-harm for themselves, since of course, sad people buy more useless crap that they don't need. You add that with the current world where we have mandates, restrictions, and lockdowns. Holy cow, you have a recipe for disaster. As even in Vermont, there has been closures of some schools because of record high number of cases that are happening in that state right now, that has one of the highest compliance rates of taking a procedure that the establishment wants them to take. Duke University, that made it mandatory to take this procedure that the establishment wants them to take, is also dealing with a very significant outbreak of cases. Israel, Iceland, Montenegro, so many other places that have very high compliance rates are dealing with these new cases. What's happening here? Well, we're going to be discussing that specifically on LukeUncensored.com. I already said too much already, and that's why I created my own platform. I'm going to be releasing a new video later on today where I could speak more freely, be able to express and talk about topics that are deemed too controversial for this platform. And boy, do I have a lot to say. There's also a leaked Zoom video that is absolutely mind-blowing. LA just implemented more mandates, and truly what's happening right now is absolutely insane. And sadly, I can't even quantify it here, but I will later on today. Now, if your children aren't let down economically, socially, politically, if they're not being raised by the tech corporatist oligarchs through their cell phone screens, they're still clearly at risk from dangerous monsters that the FBI routinely looks the other way when they knowingly have evidence, witnesses, and victims coming forward detailing their atrocities, as of course we just had very important hearings at the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. during a Senate Judiciary Committee probe investigation into the horrible actions of Larry Nassar and what some people call his accomplices at the FBI for knowingly looking the other way while atrocities were happening to small children. With one of the women testifying saying, quote, innocent children were served up to a blank, I can't say that here, let's just say a monster that hurts children, on a, quote, silver platter. Some of the women testifying here not only said that the FBI was the accomplice of this monster, but went out of their way to screw the victims here, as even famous Olympian Simone Biles came out during the testimony and said, quote, we suffered and continue to suffer because no one at the FBI or the U.S. Attorney General Office or the USOPC did what was necessary to protect us. We had been failed and we deserve answers. When speaking about Larry Nassar, she said, quote, Nassar is where he belongs, but those who enabled him deserve to be held accountable. Gymnast Maggie Nichols came out and said, quote, the survivors of Larry Nassar have a right to know why their well-being was placed in jeopardy by those individuals who chose not to do their jobs. Online commentator Mike Cernovich said, quote, the FBI is in on it, as many of the victims here are calling for the federal agents who failed them to face federal prosecution, and I would have to agree with them, especially with dereliction of duty. That's the minimal charge that should be raised here from my understanding, as the FBI Bureau says that it had a series of failures that prevented them from doing anything about this publicly known hurter of children, and that they knew about it since 2015 but failed to do anything over 17 months, which, according to victims coming forward, led to the abuse of 120 other children. Now, in the backdrop of all of this, it's also important to understand that this is not the first time that the FBI knowingly looked the other way when they had evidence, they had victims, they had everything they needed to prosecute someone, as of course it is also public knowledge that the FBI knew about Jeffrey Epstein for over 30 years. For 30 years, victims have been coming forward talking about the horrible actions of Jeffrey Epstein and the Federal Bureau of Investigations that literally had testimony from victims in the 1990s refused to do anything about it. They even knew of victims before they testified, as we're finding out from this Yahoo article that is entitled, FBI knew of Central Epstein victim 11 years before she testified. They could have unraveled this entire network, but yet they chose not to. So what is it with the Federal Bureau of Investigations routinely deciding to hurt victims even more and literally choose to allow these horrible, disgusting behaviors to continue? Well, most likely what's happening here is a larger extortion operation that has some political advantage for the agency and those who run it behind the scenes. Is this political power worth children being hurt in unspeakable ways? Absolutely not, but many people believe that this is just standard protocol and standard practice by the FBI. And that, to me, is absolutely disgusting. There deserves to be a lot more accountability, and that's why we're going to be following the updates with this official Senate probe and Senate investigation very closely, as it could potentially signal some larger transparency and accountability to a federal organization that has too much power and keeps routinely getting caught abusing it. Clearly, something is absolutely wrong, and until it's addressed, expect these kind of behaviors to continue. In related news, Prince Andrew, by the way, is fighting more civil court cases against him, as his lawyers are saying that the lawsuit against him now is, quote, baseless. He was actually served legal papers recently as he's being personally sued by one of his victims who was underage when they were spending time together. Why is this a personal lawsuit, not one by the government? Well, because the government is doing what they did for the last 30 years and aiding and abetting these monsters. This should be a public case brought by the state against Prince Andrew, since there is an overwhelming amount of evidence against him that, of course, the government has. And the UK police announced that they have no reason to investigate this, as, of course, they're connected to these monsters that do unspeakable things and are working as their protectors. Yes, right now, in the United Kingdom, if you're paying taxes, you're paying taxes for an establishment that is aiding and abetting horrible, disgusting human beings that like to hurt children. That's literally where your tax dollars are going, as this whole entire corrupted system has absolutely no justice for the victims of the very powerful. Let's just call a spade here. It's absolutely disgusting and pathetic. That's my own personal opinion. If you think I'm wrong, let me know why in the comment section below. If you like this video, click like. If you disliked it, click dislike. I got a lot more to say. I'm going to be saying it on lukeuncensored.com. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. I hope to see you later on today with our new video. I love you guys. Stay tuned for a lot more.